We have Meta launching their own cloud. Pretty huge news. Using their excess capacity, selling it off. Meta stock's up. A lot of the component makers are down. Worry that Meta will soak up kind of their demand. Meta's new cloud will soak up their demand. But I think this just makes sense from Meta's perspective. It's a new customer, one, and then if they serve models and things like that, could be a net increase in demand. You know, there is just being this little kind of small amount of you know, excess kind of chips kind of, you know, being rented out. But if they have too many chips, it's also maybe a little bearish, right? Where it's like, well, SpaceX and Meta are kind of these bumbling firms that don't have enough chips. Excuse me, have too many chips. And so, you know, here they are. You know, they've bought way too many of these things, and then you know, they have a way to get out of them now by selling them. And certainly SpaceX has done that well as well. So the question is, when do they re-up? If they're going to re-up, are they just re-ing up for the same customers like OpenAI and a few other guys? So, you know, is this a double whammy where not only do you have Meta saying we don't need more chips, we got enough. Not only that, but we need to sell off the chips we got now. So we're not only not going to buy more from NVIDIA, NVIDIA is going to have a hard time selling more. You know, GodelTerminal.com, check it out. That's our sponsor and the company that I founded to make great financial software. Okay, so what do? I think you buy, but I also am wondering what, you know, how hard this hits. Yeah, I mean, look, if they have enough memory, if they have if they have enough compute, you just wouldn't think that you'd start a cloud. You know, Elon started a cloud because he bought so much of this stuff, and his team was disorganized, the wrong people, etc. So how do you, you know, you know, sorry, I'm just I think humanoids are a little weird. I mean, it's certainly intriguing sector, but it's a little early. You know, clearly Boston Robotics is interesting. Anyway, so what's going to happen here to memory and GPUs? I mean, I think certainly the first reaction is, very scary for if you're a competitor to one of these guys. If you're, say, you're Nebius or your CoreWeave, now you got to compete with Meta. Great, you're gonna, and they were the customers for Nebius and CoreWeave. So I think Meta's sitting there saying, if we're going to be in the data center business, we might as well take clients on too. But again, a little odd. I mean, would you, if you're OpenAI, go to Meta? A bit of a bizarre thing to do. So this is going to definitely shake the space a bit. But I think cooler heads will prevail. I don't think things have changed overnight. So I'm buying. Neuralink's amazing. Yeah, I mean Neuralink's really for people who are extremely sick. Neuralink's not meant for normies. It's meant for people who can't walk and move. That reminds me, I tell my friend about it. Why is Amazon up? Good question. Yeah, you would think this is a little bearish for Microsoft as well. And SpaceX. But I don't know. Like I said, I think cooler heads may prevail here. It's not, let's see, where did this exactly come from? I mean, this is Reuters. I guess came from Bloomberg News. Meta's building a cloud to sell excess compute. It's a Bloomberg report. Computing power and models, setting up with a. Okay, well, this is, if it's computing power where you can use their model with the compute, that's not bearish. That's, I think, expected. That's not really a competitor. That's actually kind of bullish. There's a way big difference between Meta saying they're overbuilt and Meta saying, well, actually, I wear a shirt every day. Well, actually, we want to sell to enterprises. Of course they do. Everybody has a site where you can use their models, and the models by definition come with compute. So renting excess compute with that, kind of like, well, if we're going to provide you the GPU plus model, maybe we'll provide you the model alone. Well, that's open source. And then we'll provide you the GPU alone. It certainly, it could be a bit more nuanced than maybe the Bloomberg article is suggesting. They're seeing some recovery in the stocks as we speak. Micron's still at 5, 6, 7%. I'm going to read the article from our competitor Bloomberg. It's Meta's billion cloud business to sell excess AI compute. This is by two authors there. Meta is developing plans for a cloud business that will sell access to AI computing power and models. Meta has been rushing to secure expensive data centers and other infrastructure to fuel its own AI ambitions, is forming a business to generate revenue from excess computing power sold to outside customers. One potential plan includes selling access to various AI models that are hosted on Meta's existing AI infrastructure approach similar to Bedrock. And Meta would run data centers and chips that power the model. That makes sense, including its own Muse Spark models, and charge developers to access them. The company is also considering selling access to raw computing capacity, akin to neoclouds. Well, I mean, I think the first one is not bearish. That's expected. The second one is kind of, what? Well, we don't know that they're doing that. Development of these new business lines is part of Meta Compute, internal initiative to build and manage the AI infrastructure. Meta Compute is led by Santosh, Meta's head of infrastructure, Dan, and Meta president, Dina Powell. McCormick. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure this is... Despite the complexities, Meta has signaled to investors that he's open to selling excess computing infrastructure and an API. Zuckerberg said it's definitely on the table in May, so I'm not sure this is new news. Almost every week, there are different... Okay, I have to do the Zuck impression. Almost every week, there are different companies that come to us from the outside asking us to both stand up an API service or asking if we have compute that they could buy from us at some premium to what we've bought it at. We haven't done that yet because we think that we have a use for the compute. But obviously, if we get to a point where we feel that we have overbuilt, then that is an option that we have. And that is partially what gives us confidence in investing in this build out. Amid a fast-moving AI race, Zuck has repeatedly suggested that he believes the industry is constrained when it comes to computing capacity and that Meta should amass as much as compute as possible and determine its use later. Okay. That's the news. Oh, yeah, I have to make a tweet about QCLS. Forgot about that, actually. We have news. QCLS. QC Technologies. I think we have a news. We put out a press release yesterday. I knew it was coming, of course. I couldn't talk about it, but I forgot to tweet about it.
Well, I think Shkreli's really on something. I don't understand anything about photonic computing or anything, but here in Omaha, we don't do such things. But, I like the kid. I would invest with him.
Michael Saylor, I just have to drink a thing of vodka, and I could be Saylor. Short ball. I don't know. Good question. I don't trade ball. Sleep is not for the weak, and no, I'm not going to link up with Diddy. Photonic computing, I mean, there's plenty of papers about it. You know. I don't know anything about Volantis. I've heard of them, but I don't think they do photonic computing. They're doing they're doing like some weird core technology. It's not exactly photonic compute. It's just it's waveguides basically, but it's still electronic core. Yeah, it's more of a photonic motherboard. That's a good way to put it. The vision for QCLS to make the great photonic computer that big AI companies would use instead of GPUs. That is the vision. It's an ayahuasca vision. I'm on a vision quest. How did you get so handsome? I forgot we're on full view. So sorry about that. I know you guys aren't here for my face. Well, maybe some of you weirdos are. There we go. "10-minute rundown of photonic computing. What are the odds your photonic computing works?" Yeah, so there's already companies doing this. There's a company called Opticore, and there's another company called Neurophos. There was a company called Luminous. There's been academic photonic computing chips. There are chips in China. So it's really not some huge thing. I don't read too much of the chat, Superstar. But I'm also here to entertain and promote Godel. Yeah, so I think that photonic computing is known to work. I think the question is, can you make the entire unit attractive to customers? So the main thing that photonic computing is good for, that most people think it's good for, at least, is mammals. It's very, very, very good at mammals. And obviously mammals are the heart of a neural network. But, the downside, of course, is that neural networks also do nonlinear functions, right? So you guys may know how a transformer propagates. If you don't, let me show you. Yeah. So here's the transformer architecture. So which of these steps are linear and which of these are nonlinear? Let's just do the single layer, or the single, I guess it's single layer decoder layer. So when you have the input, this is, there's some ADC that has to take this from electronic to photonic. You do all this stuff on GPU or FPGA, I think. And then here, the attention head is mostly still mammals, but there are nonlinear functions that are like softmax. You also have layer normalization, which I don't know if you're here. Okay, yeah, here's the add a norm. These are all nonlinear in the normalization, at least. The feed-forward MLP, of course, has its activation functions are nonlinear, and then softmax is nonlinear here. So, it's a fairly, the matmls are really easy to do. The nonlinearities are not, and that's where you can get punished by making one of these computers, because if you have to go back and forth between linear or electronic and optical, where obviously, sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on the market here, trying to trade a little bit. Well, a matml is linear, right? Neural network has to have nonlinearities or it can't be a universal function approximator. But regardless, the parts that are, if you want to split it up into the parts that are, I'm just looking around for a presentation or something, but if you want to split it up into parts that are, you put the good parts on the good chip and the bad parts on the bad chip, or the linear parts on the linear chip, and the nonlinear parts on the nonlinear chip. I think that's a mistake. People are doing that. But I think that, it is a bit of a mistake in the sense that, you have to go back and forth between two different domains, and that's going to cost you a lot. So I think there's, a really much better play in doing it all in light. Now, how do you do it all in light? Light does not do nonlinear functions. So we have, I wouldn't call it a secret technology, but, we have a technology that does that. And then the other issue is at least on transformers, the attention heads have state. You have to chunk them in memory somewhere. And that's something where, you have to be willing to store stuff, and storage in optics is not exactly a solved problem either. So, that's the, that's kind of the other thing we had to solve, or we are solving. So the third thing, this is our proprietary technology, no license. We are developing and patenting. Yeah, so quantum is sort of a joke compared to what we're doing, in my opinion. At least for AI, there's no way to scale past, silicon. I was actually on a call with one of the biggest semiconductor companies. Actually, sorry, it was one of the biggest computer companies in the world last night. I won't say who, but my girl and I were pitching them, and the lady from the company said, look, I'm in 100% agreement with you. I don't think we can get out. We have to get out of electronic transistors somehow. And there's no way we can scale what we have as a technology community if we just stick to transistors. It's a very shitty place to be. And I think that's true. I think it's going to be really hard to scale a GPU 1000x. What technology, and I'm not saying we can scale a GPU 1000x or million-x, but what technology is even possible to do that with? And I think that's photonic computing. So, yeah, exactly. D-Lau got it right. So yeah, so I think there's, a lot of
interest and excitement, but it's really the computer company described it as a moonshot. And I said, well, it is a moonshot. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. It might take 5 years, but the quantum guys have been at their shit for 20 years. I think the harder, the nice part about this is that it has some moonshot properties, no doubt, but silicon photonics is a big deal now. You don't have to make your own foundry or design your own exotic chips like some of the quantum guys have to get some really custom stuff. I'll talk about DACs in a second. I don't think DACs are the bottleneck anymore. DACs are the bottleneck for Opticore and Neurophos because they want to do all those conversions, which I think is kind of nuts. I don't want to convert every signal to light to electricity to light to electricity. That sounds like a disaster to me. I want those guys to win because we all need to win together in this space. If we're going to be the future NVIDIA, Intel, an AMD, I don't mind if one of us is AMD like us or they're NVIDIA. That's fine. As long as we all get to the promised land, I'm cool with that. But how do we get to the promised land? That's the question. And they want to do it with DACs and ADCs. So, convert from analog, which is light, to digital, which is electricity, and the digital encoding, most importantly, because you can have an analog electrical. But when you hear me say digital or electric, I really am talking about, the electric digital signal that is transistor based, not analog electrical. So you go from light to electricity to light to light to electricity. I mean, you lose every time you have to do these hops. Yes, my wife is an investor as well. She's on the board too. So, our goal is to try to avoid that by staying in light the entire time. Anyway, Meta out with the news that they are going to form their own cloud. Not surprising to me in the sense that they're going to have models and tokens, but somewhat surprising to people that, potentially they will be renting compute as well. I think the market's taking this a little too seriously for now. I don't think Meta necessarily wants to be in the compute business. I think they want to give you a model plus compute, but the idea of renting you a raw GPU still seems off to me. It would be a little bit bearish if true, but the Bloomberg article I read wasn't really that convincing that they were going to do that. And I think the already quick carnage in the sector, with many stocks down now 5 to 10% over, a sentence that was a maybe from what was really a planned Meta initiative, which is, of course, they're going to serve their models on their own cloud. Everybody is doing that. So I don't think NeoCloud guys are cooked. I think it's competitive that Meta's going to have. Look, Meta wasn't spending $100 billion on GPUs for nothing. I mean, this is, we all expected Meta to, at some point, to release a product. And they've released a product. And, so I'm not sure why, this is surprising. The surprising part was, well, what if they sell you the model and the GPU together, which sort of makes sense because OpenAI is implicitly selling you the outputs of their model on their GPU cluster. But if they're directly renting you the GPU too, where you can do whatever you want on that GPU, well, that's AWS's business. That's Meta's business. That's SpaceX's business. And again, SpaceX not down. AMD really not down much. It's the stuff that's sort of very vulnerable. Nebius and CoreWeaver down. Stuff that's gone up a lot, like Micron, for example, which is hurting yours truly. But that kind of thing. I'm not sure I'd buy the dip on CoreWeaver or Nebius. These are sort of tough businesses to be in, regardless. When you buy a computer and you rent it for 20 or 30% premium, it's you run this risk of like, well, what happens when the demand's not there? Now you're holding on to this stuff at a terrible loss. So, we'll see. I don't think Meta's given up on soda at all. Meta will always have the distribution, which is really important. So if somebody else reaches soda, they become a customer of that company's state of the art. IQM is that those are the quantum guys? Every quantum guy is going public. Yeah, friend's zone is correct. I mean, add leverage in and you're really wondering what the heck are you doing, Low margin infrastructure plus leverage is a recipe for disaster. But on the flip side, if you're really AGI pilled and you think that we're just going to have massive factories of machines and that we're never going to not, be the world is not going to be, the world's going to change forever. And we're just going to have mountains and mountains and mountains of GPUs, just nonstop, nonstop GPUs everywhere. Then yeah, that's possible. And if so, that's where we're going to be. Every corner of this earth will be a GPU and energy going into it. I mean, that's the vision some people have. Do you have that vision? Do you like that? Do you like the sound of that? Why not? Yeah, I don't know, Canon X. I'm not sure there is insane growth needed to justify Micron's valuation. I mean, they've had the insane growth. I don't know if you saw their last quarter. That was pretty huge. What's a sub Q account? Sorry. The D-Wave? I've never got the D-Wave account. What's sub Q? Oh, sub quadratic. No, still no. Those guys have disappeared quietly. We're trading Micron. We're trading a few other stocks here. I don't know if one should buy bonds or not. Well, everyone, when people invest, everyone wants to be an expert in what they're trading. That's kind of the nature of investing, right? You have to become a fast expert. You're never going to be an expert compared to the guy that's spent his whole life in this space. But I think that, there is that's the basic nature of investing, right? Here on Goodell, the way Nebius is absolutely hemorrhaging right now is scaring me. Well, I think it sort of makes sense. I mean, if Meta's really coming for you, that means Meta not only doesn't have to be your client anymore, they're now your competitor. That is something that's a little worrisome if you're in the cloud business. But having said that, we don't even know if it's true. So until we use the product and we don't know what they're thinking, are they going to be using the entire fleet, or are they going to be using, a tiny, tiny amount of it? We just don't know. So it remains to be seen, just what that looks like. I gave you advice to buy Bitcoin? Doesn't sound like me.